I work for the CIA. I am not a spy. I just read books. We read everything that's published in the world.
On this podcast, especially when we did our This is Revolution episodes, we have spent plenty of time talking about the fallout from Watergate and the cynicism and suspicion that boiled over in the mid-1970s.
Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
This feeling was a long time coming. As far back as the Kennedy assassination, there was mounting suspicion that our government was lying to us. As assassinations of prominent Americans such as Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X continued unabated, stories about the CIA's plots to assassinate world leaders, especially Fidel Castro using mafia figures, broke. And Americans became so disillusioned with Lyndon Johnson's Vietnam policy that it pushed a once popular president from office.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
Richard Nixon was like throwing a match into a gasoline-filled stadium. Nixon's paranoid personality and outlook, which saw the CIA as a force needing to be reined in and controlled by Nixon loyalists, lit the stadium aflame with Watergate, and the smoke filled the whole city of Washington. Both the FBI and the CIA were implicated as the entire facade came crashing down. In 1974, as the cultural mood reached a fever pitch, 1 year after Nixon's resignation, James Grady, who had been both a political aide and was currently working for the investigative muckraker Jack Anderson, released his first novel, 6 Days of the Condor. Jack Anderson had worked for Drew Pearson's Merry-Go-Round and was the journalist who had uncovered the CIA's mafia plot to overthrow Fidel Castro.
A newsman operates in the open, and everything he does is out where everybody can see it. The great danger are those who operate behind closed doors, those who operate in secret. Now, the president never ever expected that his secret conversations were going to be draped out for the world to see. Now we know how they talk.
James Grady's novel was about CIA corruption and centered around Ronald Malcolm, a CIA employee who returns to his station to find everyone in his section dead. He goes on the run and must evade rogue members of a rogue CIA element who are out to assassinate him. In the process, Malcolm takes a paralegal named Wendy Ross hostage. This novel was electric, dropping right before Cy Hirsch published the Family Jewels leak in the New York Times. This leak confirmed the CIA was in violation of its charter and was spying on American citizens. The Family Jewels report had been compiled by Nixon loyalist CIA director James Schlesinger in an attempt to bring the CIA to heel. The moment was too hot not to turn 6 Days of the Condor into a movie immediately. And so, Sidney Pollack directed an adaptation, 3 Days of the Condor, in 1975. 1975 was the year that all of this crescendoed, dubbed the Year of Intelligence. 3 Days of the Condor starred Robert Redford and Faye Dunaway at the peak of their popularity. Like the title, which cuts the amount of days in half, 3 Days of the Condor changes many of Grady's all-too-prescient details. The plot, which gets Robert Redford's Joe Turner's section killed, is about capturing oil fields in the Middle East, instead of Grady's plot, which is about drug smuggling from Laos. Joe Turner, rather than being involved in a clandestine operations office, is an analyst in the CIA front, the American Literary Historical Society. In both the book and the movie, the Turner character is responsible for reading and logging spy novels and adventure stories into a computer.
Yes.
Hey, where'd you get that thing about the ice? Dashiell Hammett?
Dick Tracy. Are you sure about this ideogram?
This means that he has an outsider status, which does not tar him with the CIA's corruption. Joe Turner does not fit with the stuffy bookish professors, military men, or overly academic members of the CIA. He is a dork who rides a bike to work, reads voraciously, and has no experience with covert operations. Pollack's version also moves the action away from Washington, D.C. and the nation's political center, and puts the action in a frenzied and busy New York City, complete with scenes in the World Trade Center. Pollack and Robert Redford, both known as famous liberals, took pains to explain that they were mostly just interested in making an espionage movie rather than the real-life implications of the CIA. And yet, the cynicism, corruption, and real-world analogies that underwrote Grady's novels are very much present. Pretty interestingly, as 1975 is the year when the North Vietnamese tanks rolled into Saigon and officially ended the Vietnam War, the next stage of global war against communism would be in the Middle East rather than Southeast Asia.
That's it, isn't it? This whole damn thing was about oil. Wasn't it? Wasn't it?
Huh? Oil? Who said something about oil, bitch? You cooking? Oil?
Robert Redford is in peak form in 3 Days of the Condor. A few months back, during our election night extravaganza, we watched The Candidate and talked about Robert Redford finding out about Watergate while on a train making press appearances.
And I saw this little article about the profile of two guys. And I said, wow, that's interesting. I said, now that, I'd love to know what that was like. And I thought in my head at that time, I said, wow, what a nice little black and white film that would be with two unknown actors to play these guys and tell the story that nobody would know about, because it eventually led to Nixon resigning and so forth.
He tracked down Woodward and Bernstein in order to get their stories for what would end up being All the President's Men in 1976. Faye Dunaway, likewise, at her peak, was about to star in Network in 1976, and had just starred with Jack Nicholson in Chinatown in 1974.
I don't want your pain. I don't want your menopausal decay and death. I don't need you, Max. Now get out of
me. You need me badly.
One other actor I'd like to shout out is Max von Sydow. He plays a shadowy contract killer who may or may not be from Alsace-Lorraine.
It would happen this way. You may be walking. Maybe the first sunny day of the spring. And a car will slow beside you. And a door will open. And someone you know, maybe even trust, will get out of the car. And he will smile. A becoming smile. But he will leave open the door of the car and offer to give you a lift.
Sidney Pollack has been adamant about saying that this film should be taken as fiction and not as political propaganda. However, it should be noted that the Year of Intelligence culminated in the Church Committee being formed to investigate the CIA.
And the dart itself, when it strikes the target, does the target know that he's been hit and about to die?
That depends, Mr. Chairman, on the particular dart used. There are different kinds of these flechettes that were used in various weapon systems, and a special one was developed which potentially would be able to enter the target without perception.
You definitely don't have to feel one way or the other about the CIA to enjoy a pretty complicated and intriguing mystery full of espionage, political corruption, and references to a giant, almost extinct bird.
I don't...
What is your designation?
Condor.
And a romance between two of Hollywood's most talented stars of the 1970s.
We have games. That's all. We play games. What if? How many men? What would it take? Is there a cheaper way to destabilize a regime? That's what we're paid to do.
Walk on.